We are born free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
that's complicated.
In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Excited for today's episode. We're going to be talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is protecting and fighting against censorship. Some tactical, practical methods that are available out there in order to not only fight back against censorship, but actually go on the offensive, I think, against censorship from big tech companies, which is something that I think we are behind in doing so. Much of the way that we have dealt with censorship, I think at this point, has been very reactive. So I'm extremely excited to bring you my guest today, who I will introduce in just a moment. But before I do that, I want to remind you about our sponsor for today's episode. That sponsor is Masa Chips. Do you like tortilla chips? Do you hate seed oils? Well, then you're going to like Masa Chips, because Masa Chips are fried in grass-fed beef tallow, no seed oils. Seed oils, of course, very inflammatory and not good for you. If you've been looking for a healthy tortilla chip that does not taste like cardboard and tastes delicious, then the answer there is Masa Chips. Just go to masachips.com and pick up a few bags of Masa Chips and use promo code LIONS at checkout. And I promise you, you are going to love them. You're going to absolutely love them. They are freaking delicious, and they're scaling up. They're growing. This is a young startup. You're helping some freedom-minded entrepreneurs to advance their vision of a seed oil-free tortilla chip. So please do what you can. Buy some Masa Chips. Secondly, I want to remind you, this show, Finding Freedom, every time I interview someone, now I do a bonus segment. And that's no different for today. I have an awesome bonus segment that I recorded with my guest, where we dig a little deeper into certain areas. I find out why maybe Joe Rogan doesn't like him. So if you want to learn more about my guest and get an extra 15, 20 minutes of Finding Freedom, be sure to join the Lions of Liberty Pride. You can do so by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And of course, you join the Pride, you get all of the other additional perks that we have. So don't delay. Go join the Pride today. That rhymed. You're right. Free rhymes here on Finding Freedom. Well, let's get into this interview. I don't want to waste any more time. All right. Live here to the Lions of Liberty Pride, and I'm joined by Matthew Raymer. He is the CEO of Content Safe. And we're going to learn all about Content Safe. So I don't want to tell you exactly what it is, because then you wouldn't listen to this whole interview. But essentially, from what I understand, it is a way for those of us, like here at Lions of Liberty, who have suffered from deplatforming or shadow bans on YouTube. I'm looking at you, YouTube. I don't like you, YouTube. People like that, they help to keep the content safe, to keep it circulating, to keep it out there. And we'll talk all about that. But Matthew, happy to have you here on Finding Freedom.
Good to be here with you. It's a pleasure to be on your show and to talk about our wonderful service with you all.
Awesome.
In a nutshell, what we are is a content redistribution service. We take content from one place and we broadcast it to many other places. We're specialized in alternative media platforms. We don't though we have the capability to upload to YouTube or Facebook or the mainstream platforms, we de-emphasize that, and we are trying to encourage people to go to places like BitChute and Odyssey and Rockfin
Mhm.
and Brighteon and the many other sites that are out there.
There were a couple names there I don't think I've heard before, but we can talk more about those. I've heard of BitChute and Odyssey. Um, we use Rumble too. But yeah, there were. We'll talk about the other options. I don't want to dig into the details of it yet, because first I want my audience to learn a little bit about you and how you ended up here, and why you're passionate about this. So maybe if you
Well,
could just give some background on yourself, how you
sure.
got to being CEO of Content Safe.
Well, let me. I can make this story as long or short as you like, but let me try to
Let's
give you
let,
the
let, let, let's
Midland.
go let's go in detail. I mean, it's a
Okay, sure.
podcast. Let's make it fun.
Okay. Well, I kind of give a lot of credit to my dad. Uh, I'm 53. My dad passed away in 2012, so I was a child of the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
And my dad was an old school conspiracy theorist. So
Oh,
in
okay.
1984, 1985, he was telling me that the bankers ran the world and that the US government was involved in all of these projects that they shouldn't be involved in. And he was very well read for a man who never finished high school. Uh,
Did he
and
vote for Ron Paul in 1988 on the Libertarian ticket? Do you know?
no, I don't think he did. In fact, I'm
Okay.
not even sure who he voted for in 88, but I can remember in 1980 with Reagan. I can
Mhm.
remember because I was quite politically active at a young age. And I remember talking to my dad about Reagan and how great Reagan was. And my dad looked at me and he said, Reagan's a choice between two evils. That's what he told me in 1980. And he was a registered Republican
Yeah.
at the time.
Mhm.
And he was very anti-establishment. To just give a bit of backstory, I'm the last child of four, and my eldest brother volunteered to go to Vietnam.
Wow.
Yeah, and he volunteered, and he told my mom before he went, because my mom, bless her heart, my mom had me when she was 37, and
Mhm.
she had him whenever she was 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my brother told my mom, "It's good you're having another child because he's my replacement."
Wow.
And this broke him dying broke the heart of both my mom and my dad. My dad begged him to go to Canada to avoid being drafted, and he went ahead and
Mhm.
volunteered because he felt guilty. He had friends dying.
Wow.
It was crazy, and I think it
Mhm.
was out of that that my dad became anti-establishment because of that.
Yeah.
And that kind of sets the footing for what comes next, which is the PC revolution, personal computers. And my dad and mom pumped a lot of effort into my education and me. Uh, I mean, goodness, the things my dad was busy working with my other three siblings, but with me, it was like everything was about me. It was like taking me to go to places, taking me to go, not just entertainment. I mean, like intellectual things.
Hmm.
So it was all about educating me and making sure I could think and all of that stuff. Well, I ended up with a computer when I was 13, when no one else even hardly knew what a computer was. Uh, and I taught myself to program. And by the age of 15, I'd started a small company
What kind of
pre-internet,
computer? I'm just curious. What kind of computer? Do you remember what you had when you were 13?
uh, the Commodore 64.
Okay, I don't even know what that is. So what year would
You
have
don't
that
know.
been?
That would have been 1983.
Okay,
And
well, see,
one of
I was born in '83, so that would make sense why I
uh,
don't know.
well, there at that time, just aside, there was really only three different types of computers you could get in
Mhm.
1983. There were these little home Sinclair 1000 with these little pressure sensitive keypads that you would buy off of magazine articles.
Mhm.
And then there were the TRS 80s, which you buy at Radio Shack. And I always thought of a computer whenever I was that age, like, oh, that's a real computer. TRS 80 is a real computer. But my dad bought me this Commodore, which was a popular brand. I think it cost $300 or $400 in 1983,
That's a
which
lot of
was
money
kind of
back then.
pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they invested in that for me, and I taught myself to program. And I started this small company. Didn't really go far because you're only 15 years old, but it was building bulletin board software, which pre-internet, you could get these dial-up modems.
Mhm.
You may remember dial-up modems if you were
Oh
born
yeah,
in
of
83.
course, yes. With the AOL sign on and you've got mail. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Well,
I'm
see,
part of the.
this was
I am a millennial, but I'm like the oldest millennial possible. So millennials are split in like two generations. There's a generation that remembers the world before the internet, and there's the millennials who don't. But
well, I mean, it's kind of a mixed blessing for me. I'm Gen X. I'm the
Mhm.
very definition of Gen X, 1970. And I feel blessed in the sense that I get the PC revolution. I get to know what everything was like before computers.
Yeah.
I grew up on a farm in southern Indiana. So I know what it's like to live in a rural place. And my dad actually, he had a job in Kentucky that he commuted to every day, but he had a farm as well, which was, I call it a hobby farm,
Mhm.
about 50 acres, and we would
Oh,
raise
nice.
corn, tobacco, soybeans, cattle, goats, chickens, turkeys. In fact, when I came around, they scaled down because before me, it was dairy, pigs, a whole 9 yards. They did everything.
And he
A
was working a full-time job?
Yes,
Wow.
and my mom had she had a what is it, a beautician's license, and
Huh.
my dad built her a little beauty shop on our property, and all of the ladies around the countryside would come to my mom's beauty shop to get their hair cut and all of that. So I grew up in a salon.
Yeah.
So
Got all the
they said I
gossip.
learned to
Yeah.
talk. They said I learned to talk before I could walk, and as it shows in this interview, I have a bit of a gift for gab. Um, so anyway, back to content safe.
Mhm.
I got interested in the sciences after that, and I entered college and I triple majored in computer science, math, and physics. And then I started a PhD in physics in 1992. But after a year and a lot of stress, because physics graduate school is quite stressful, I said, you know what? I have good grades, but I really don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. So I went back and got a master's in computer science. Now, this is another pivotal point in content safe. I was in one of my last semesters of that master's degree, and I had one of my professors come in because we had the internet on campus at that time. This would have been 94. We had a National Science Foundation grant to bring internet to the university. And I was actually in one of the first Linux laboratories ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I helped. There was a team of about a dozen of us that helped administer the first Linux student-run Linux laboratory. Slackware, if for any Linux aficionados out there. And this professor came in one day and he said, they can't keep this internet open. It has to be censored. Now he didn't explain
Wow.
what he saw that bothered him, but that's what he said. He opened the door and he said that. And I remembered exactly what I thought in that moment. I was like, no, it shouldn't be censored because I could see in 1994 the value of the internet. And
Mhm.
even then, I would call it 80% garbage, 20% treasure. And I still think that's true. It's about 80% garbage and 20% treasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, fast forward a little bit, I had a classmate whenever I was in physics that had started a business in Hong Kong, and he invited me over because, like the typical American, I never traveled. I traveled outside of the country to Mexico, but I mean that was like at that time you didn't even need a passport to go across the border to Mexico. And I was like, okay, I'll come for the summer. Well, I met my future wife there. And I went back to the States, finished my degree, came back, stayed in Southeast Asia the rest of my life.
Wow.
And over that time, I've ran businesses here in Southeast Asia. I've done consulting globally, US, Europe, Australia. I haven't done any gigs in Africa. Oh, no, I actually did do a gig for someone in Africa once, and nobody in South America. And over that time, I've done corporate, I've done government work for governments other than the US, like the UK. And I've come to understand how the world works. And I didn't like what I saw. And whenever I was skeptical about what my dad told me as a child, but whenever I got that knowledge of the real world, I was like, you know what? You really have to protect the ability to speak, even if it's something you disagree with.
Mhm.
Because the way you hash out things is you discuss them. You
Right.
don't hash things out by suppressing them. In fact, you create a dynamic of violence whenever you do that because people have
Mhm.
no other recourse, at least in their minds, especially as emotionally insecure and immature that the world is. Uh, Most people don't really know how to handle their emotions very well. And discussion is one way you do that. So 2017, 2018, whenever Alex Jones was deplatformed, we we really took it seriously and we said, you know what, we've been thinking about this I've been thinking about content safe since 2012. Uh and I was like, let's do it. So
Mhm.
I had a I had a version that I actually outsourced, and we ran that for about a year. And while I thought the programmer did a pretty good job, I think that he didn't really understand one, philosophically what we were about, and two, I don't think he understood the need to be able to rapidly grow. So I basically threw away his version and I rewrote my own. And we've been we've been going out and soliciting content safe seriously since 2019. And with the lockdowns and all of those issues, we knew that we were going to be growing rapidly, and we've gotten up to about 50 clients right now.
Awesome. So let's talk about in a nutshell how it works. So, this is the Lions of Liberty podcast here right now. Most is being streamed to an unlisted YouTube and to Facebook. But when it publishes, obviously it'll go out to Apple Podcasts, all the podcasting apps. We publish to YouTube, to Rumble, and to Odyssey. And like I said at the top of the show, for years, maybe 5, 6 years, we were effectively shadow banned on YouTube, where they would keep us perpetually at 2 strikes. And then
Right.
finally, this year, something shifted where we stopped getting strikes. They would just dig up strikes from the past whenever we would get close to one expiring. So now we're able to monetize, but we're still kind of shadow banned. But anyway, that's just kind of the backstory for us here at Lions of Liberty. So say Lions of Liberty comes to you with our shows, and we say we want to use content safe. What would we be getting in the product?
Well, as an architectural decision, I decided that I would provide a flexible means of getting content from content creators. So as far as what you would do, it's really up to you. What we try to stay with your current workflow. So you're automatically posting to YouTube. We would pull it from YouTube, and then you would tell us what platforms you want it to go to, and then it would automatically go out to those platforms. Now, I have some content creators who have production teams, and what we do with them is, let's say that your production team likes to use Monday.com, for instance. We would hook into Monday.com, and in that case, we can actually schedule shows. So if someone comes to us and we want this to be published at 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, well, as long as your system tells us that needs to be published at that time, our system will upload it at that time.
Yeah.
So we're very flexible about how we work, and that's philosophically at the foundation of how the company's supposed to work. And there's good reasons for that, because content creators, pardon the expression, are kind of like herding cats. So
yes, that's true.
so you really can't. I met a fellow who tried to do something like what we do maybe about 10 years ago for podcasts. And he just threw up his hands and said, nobody wants it. And I looked at the way he did it, and I'm like, there's a reason why no one wants your service. The reason that they don't want your service is you try to lock them into a particular workflow.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're saying, no, everybody has to do it this way. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. Technology is flexible enough that you can accommodate a wide. And honestly, when you get down to it, there's only a limited number of ways people can do it.
Right.
So why not support all those ways of doing it, so that everybody gets to, to do it the way they want to do it.
Right. So you said that you've been growing. You started really pushing it in 2019, I think is what you said. I'm just curious what types of, and obviously I'm not expecting you to name any clients or anything like that, but just like different industries. Have there been any industries that have come to you that are a little bit surprising that you weren't expecting? Or like different topics, podcast topics or ideologies that you weren't expecting?
I could tell you the one that I guess my business partners told me that it wasn't that surprising, but since I don't know much about that community, it was surprising to me. But the UFO people,
Ah,
yeah, they like our service.
yeah.
So that was a bit surprising. And I actually have one client that is in the auto repair, auto experimentation industry. So he's like, well, I know that nothing I say right now could get me censored, but he said, I am conservative in my viewpoints, and it's possible I could say something that would get me deplatformed. So I want to protect my content, even though it doesn't seem like it's a target.
Very forward looking. I mean, yeah, that's
A smart guy.
Smart guy. Yeah. Just curious, obviously Elon Musk purchased Twitter. He's made some changes there. Who knows where he's going with everything? There's this background noise of him, turning Twitter into a payment application similar to what they have in China with, I forget the name of the app, but essentially you can do everything through it. And what are his goals with that? And he has Neuralink, and what is he going to do? Tie a Neuralink with Twitter somehow? But anyway, I'm just curious to get your views on Elon, and if he's someone you think is friendly to free speech.
Elon. I don't trust Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Now let me say that in a war, you can have, and we are in a war. In a war, you can have allies that are temporary allies. And I see Elon as a temporary ally. But I also see him as a man who's very much interested in promoting Elon. So a lot of these things that he's behind, one, I'm fundamentally against Neuralink because I think that while I understand what he's saying, and I understand the utility of being able to directly connect to machines. I also see a great danger in that, given the nature of human biology and our sun,
Mm-hmm.
because we would be subject to frying our brains if we had a solar flare. And the sun is
Ooh.
far more powerful than any other thing that we can ever imagine. No amount of geoengineering is going to be able to prevent us from what the sun can kick out.
That's an
And
incredible point. I've never heard anybody bring that up before. I mean, I'm not like I follow it that closely, but yeah, I had not thought of solar flares and everybody essentially dying who's hooked into it.
right, it would fry your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
what a lot of people, I'm eclectic because of my education,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, I follow things like solar news every day. And do you know, 2 weeks ago, have you ever heard of the Carrington event?
I don't think so. No.
It occurred in the 1850s, 1860s. I don't remember the exact day
Okay.
or exact year. It was a solar flare. I think it was, they classify it as an X50, I believe. And it was so strong that it caught all of the telegraph lines on fire in the US. And the telegraph machines would auto type, even if you unplugged them from their power source.
Wow.
Yeah. We had a Carrington level event 2 weeks ago that went the opposite direction from us.
Huh.
It,
So how
you
do
know, we
they
had
how do they know that? So if it's on the opposite side of the
you what
sun, right? Or they're
they
still able to
they ha- they
measure it?
have this they have this monitor that they can see, like, the because whenever it goes the opposite direction, there still is a splash off, right? Because it's kind of like dropping a pebble in the water. That
Mm-hmm.
mass ejection of material goes out in a kind of spherical shape. So you can actually measure the intensity at the other side. How intense was it at the other side by how intense it was at the edges,
Okay.
right? You can extrapolate. And they're saying, well, no, if that had hit us, if it had been pointed toward us, it would have ended all the internet, all the high level technology we have would have been gone.
Yeah,
So
that
this is a real
and that a
danger.
lot of people don't. I mean, this is getting a little bit down a rabbit hole, but we'll talk about it for a little bit. But yeah, people don't think about if something like that happened. I mean, the supply chain should be shut down, electrical grid would be shut down. Um, Society would devolve into chaos within a week.
Right?
I mean,
Right. I think it would be worse in the West than less developed countries that still
I think
have
so too.
some, memory of what it's like to live pre-power.
Hmm. Yeah,
There are places in the world that still don't have power.
yeah, that's a good point.
So, Elon, I don't trust him, but I do think he's a temporary ally. But I have seen some things recently that bother me. For instance, the whole Nashville shooting. You realize that there were journalists. One you may have heard of him. He's a Thai American journalist. His name's Andy Ngo.
Hmm.
Uh, Tried to post a warning about Trans Vengeance Day about a week before the Nashville shooting.
Really?
Yes, and it was a Antifa related event that they were encouraging trans people to do acts of violence. And Twitter locked his post and would not allow him to post it or
I
keep
did
it up.
not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it on No's YouTube community page. He's got it
Okay,
posted there.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, yeah, and so Elon bought Twitter, advertising free speech, but yes, it's just a different type of censorship, a little bit.
Right. Well, of course, if you're wanting to be, Elon gets a lot of his money from the establishment.
Hmm.
So
Oh yeah.
is it really a good idea to pump, like I say, it's a temporary ally. We can take advantage of what we can take advantage of. But as far as looking at this guy as, Tony Stark or
Yeah.
Iron Man, uh, which I've seen, some people try to compare him to Tony Stark, Iron Man, but
Yeah.
he's not.
So let me ask you this, because you were talking earlier about the different platforms that you'll pull content from YouTube and distribute to these several different platforms. In your opinion, are there ones that are more protected than others, or that would maybe are not as susceptible to censorship? Those platforms that you're pushing content to.
I would say that in our company philosophy, we encourage the development of distributed means of uh, reaching your viewers.
Hmm.
So while we're helping people get onto these platforms, I would say none of them are ultimately safe. That's why we're partnered with another group that is encouraging people to self-host video using a peer-to-peer based technology. And I'm actually going to be pushing that much harder toward the end of the year as they finalize their product.
So how would that work? Self-hosting your video?
Well, basically, uh, just to give you a sketch, uh,
Yeah.
you would get either an appliance like a box that they make, or you would set up their software for free on a computer. Because this is not, while we have to make money at this sort of thing to be able to do work and feed our families,
Hmm.
this is not really ultimately about money. This is about an idea. And the
There's
technology
plenty of things you could do to make money. Like,
that's right.
yeah.
And I often say that, I didn't think of content safe necessarily as a way of making money, thought of it more as an idea. And I have faith that out of this, I develop relationships that if content safe didn't make me enough money, I can make money other ways.
Hmm.
Uh, but that said, it's still a business and you do have to pay for servers and all that stuff.
Right.
Okay. You buy the appliance, you upload your video on that appliance, and it has software that allows other people to notice that that video was published on your appliance, and then they download it to their computers or their appliances, and it becomes a sharing network that people can watch your videos on. And it's community owned. It's not run through a central server,
Huh.
and this
That's pretty
technology is
cool.
not new. It is, and it's not new technology. I mean, it's been around for at least 10 or 15 years. It's actually quite mature technology. And there are competitors. The one I'm thinking of in particular is called Interplanetary File System. There are competitors to it that are newer, but IPFS has been around for a while. And what it takes is just people participating to make it good.
Hmm.
And what we've done with this company is we're going to be the side that maintains the platforms. So on their appliance, you'll be able to enter an API key for content safe. And then whenever you upload to that appliance, then it will upload to us and we can put it on the platforms.
I like that a lot, because because I mean, one of the biggest problems I see with, be it podcasting or with publishing to YouTube, but um, just speaking of podcasting for a minute, really the bottleneck, the problematic point is essentially everything goes out through Apple Podcasts. And if Apple Podcasts were to shut you off, that's it. I mean, you don't have a show anymore, essentially.
You're toast.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, to have a way around that, and yeah, if it's video, whatever,
Well, and,
it's just you. Yeah.
in my mind, the way we need to think about this is definitely a war mentality.
Yeah.
We've got our technologies that we can use on the front end, but then we also have our fallback technologies that we can use, and we need to be willing to do this low scale if we have to.
Mhm.
I've forgotten what they call them, but supposedly before the U.S. left Afghanistan, there were these cars that would drive around that were full of computers and hard disks and Wi-Fi, and they would provide access to movies and all sorts of things as the car drove by.
Really?
That's a Yeah, really. You can find it on Wikipedia. I forgot what they call them, but there was a name
Huh.
for them. Yeah, we need to be willing to do it however it takes.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good point. And even just thinking, just stream of consciousness right now, a show like ours, Lions of Liberty, needs to be investing in that scenario. For a living, I do risk mitigation work. I'm a risk manager. So my
Cool.
wheels just start turning, thinking I'm not even applying um, the things that I use in my day job to my podcasting and content creation. But yeah.
Well, I think that we are so fortunate that so many people are coming into this movement that have professional skills. And we need to be thinking, how can I apply what I know to help this keep moving forward? Not just your
Mhm.
particular show, but the people in your community. How can they contribute to this?
Right.
It's not just
So
money, it's also skills.
yeah, well, that's a resource too. Skills
Mhm.
are resources. We can leverage that as well. And like as you said, this is a war. So can you speak just a little bit more to that sort of war mentality? Of course, you've referenced Alex Jones a couple times. I love Alex Jones and his show Infowars. I mean, he called this out decades ago. What was going to
Well,
happen? So could you
uh,
just speak
I,
to
I,
that?
I tell you, even though I would give Alex some credit, I would say that it was a French philosopher that actually really gave me this mentality. This French philosopher's name is Jacques Ellul, Ellul. He wrote a Actually, he wrote 50 books in his life. And one of the pivotal books, or you could call it seminal books, that he wrote was called The Technological Society. He wrote it in 1950. 1950.
Wow,
And all of the stuff we rail about now, he had in that book.
it's time traveler.
In, well, he was at a key position in European society, and he was a war hero because whenever the Nazis took over France, he fled to I forget what it is, Vichy controlled France or what Vichy, I forgot what that's called. He went away from the Nazis and he helped people escape the Nazis. And he was elevated to a French war hero. And because of his position and his education, and the guy was just a friggin' genius. He was absolutely a genius. He had access to all the information that the European world would give him access to. And he would just keep reporting thing after thing after thing after thing after thing
Mhm.
in his books. He had the work on the Technological Society. He has a book on propaganda that would just blow your mind. That his insights, and I read several of his books after I encountered Jones, and his viewpoint was that now he's actually kind of a black pill sort of guy, so I'm kind of watering him down a bit. Uh, his viewpoint was that our problem was technology, and for people who wouldn't use technology, they were under threat because if you're not using technology, then you're going to lose, most
Mhm.
likely. And I take my philosophy from there. We have to up our game. We also have to be aware of the consequences of the technologies we use, like, for instance, Neuralink. Why would I bother to worry about solar flares? Well, because I'm investigating risk management, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
investigating what are the possible dangers of adopting a technology and how do I compensate for those dangers.
Yeah.
So my war mentality is based on that.
That's extremely interesting. I mean, it kind of ties over. I was listening to a podcast recently where, they were talking about warfare, talking about the spiritual warfare side of it. I don't know if you're a faith based person or not. Doesn't really matter, but just it's a similar thing. Thinking how the devil created technology, but God can still use the technology for good. um, I mean, and then just not using it, you're missing out on that outlet, that path, to reach others. But
Well, staying in the general sense of spiritual, I do believe that this is first and foremost a spiritual war. Uh, I feel that it's in the hearts of men that these things originate,
hmm
and we need to be very conscious of that. If you look at the recent events about the shooting, it's very obvious that that's what's going on.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
it's
yeah,
it's kind of like, and there's a lot of people in my space, in this libertarian freedom space, that over the course of the past, really COVID lockdowns really set it off for a lot of people, where we realized, prior to that, you're in this space where it's, oh, let's talk about libertarian philosophy and these hypotheticals, and if this happened, the government may do this or do that. And then it was, bam, punch you in the face, don't leave your house, otherwise you're going to prison, you can't work, I'm shutting down your business. And it's like, holy shit, we're dealing with
right,
something serious here. But
right, right. And to emphasize that whenever I use the word technology, and I often forget to point this out, I don't just mean electronics and mechanical.
mhm.
The whole lockdown thing is a kind of technology to control a mass of populace.
Yeah.
So
So
you have to be aware of that technology. That technology exists.
are you alluding to uh, vaccine cards or CBDCs, or you're speaking to it in a
It's
different way?
simple as the lockdowns. I mean, the vaccines I
hmm
definitely think are a population control mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to see that more and more and more as the years go by, as birth rates decline,
Yeah.
because it's definitely hurting reproductive ability.
Yeah. They've admitted that. I mean, they admitted that women taking the vaccine have menstruation issues, and
Yep.
it's
Well, miscarriages are on the
hmm
rise. It's the only question I have is this uh let's say a person who took one dose,
hmm
is that going to be something? I've heard Peter McCullough say that your body can actually flush out the mRNA portion of the vaccine in 6 months because it's foreign.
hmm
I've heard other people say no, it's permanent, but I don't know. Time
Yeah.
will tell.
Yeah, and maybe they'll come up with a way to test. These people who did take the vaccine and regretting it can, actually, you can start to troubleshoot and figure out what works to maybe flush it out, or
Well,
flush it out more
there are
quickly.
people working on that. There are
Yeah,
people working on that. And I like I say, it's time will tell. It's
yeah,
really hard to say right now because I, my wife and I've talked about this, that uh, I never at any point didn't think of this as anything but deliberate.
hmm
Some people say, "Oh no, it's incompetence." No, I don't think so. I don't think this is incompetence at all. It's
yeah.
deliberate.
Well, that makes sense with your background and what you've read and what you understand. For you to immediately see it for what it was. Um,
Well, yeah,
it was,
yeah.
yeah, it was a
It's sorry.
tremendous amount of fear and propaganda that that we've gone through, that the world has gone through. I do want to talk a little bit more. We'll talk about that in the bonus show about your experience in your part
Sure.
of the world with COVID and lockdowns. We can talk about that.
Sure.
But before we leave the main show, I want you to actually first let's do this. So, is there anything about Content Safe that I didn't ask you about or we didn't talk about that you'd really like to bring up, or is there just something you just want to drive home, point one more time
Well,
about?
there are a couple things that are right now in the oven, so to speak, and I think those are worth mentioning. One, we are building a cross-platform statistics gathering system. So hopefully in the next 120 days or so, we're going to have the ability to look at when a show is broadcast, look at its viewership, watch watch it and be able to analyze like, okay, if I publish at this time, do I get more views than if I publish at this time? And do that on and also keywords and other things like that. The other thing we have.
I'm sorry. Maybe you're going to say the other thing is what I'm going to ask, but I'll ask it right now anyway. Would there be a goal eventually to be able to use that for monetization or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the key. One of my big clients, one of my big clients is using that system to aid in their monetization. Sorry, my wife poked her head into the office there for a second.
No
problem. The other thing is we are building a machine learning system for identifying what could potentially get you taken off of a platform. So like offensive language, terms of service violations. And we're doing this specifically because some of content creators want to clip their videos and they want to make sure that the clips are clean, and then they'll post them on YouTube and Instagram. And then that's supposed to drive traffic over to their non-mainstream platforms.
Okay. So just taking a clip and saying, hey, YouTube, here I am. My video is over here. If you want to see this interview, like that, like a promo that you would put up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Something, just a hook to get you to come over to another platform.
Gotcha. And what's the second thing? I interrupted you in the middle there. You said there was a second thing, or was that it?
Oh, that was the second
gotcha.
thing. Yeah.
Okay. And last thing, just plugs, Content Safe, yourself, your social media, if you want to share any of that.
Yeah. Contentsafe.co is our website. And if you're interested to book a call with us, just fill out the ingestion form and we can schedule an appointment to talk.
All right. Sounds good. We're going to go to the bonus show now. So be sure to subscribe and join the Lions of Liberty Pride to hear that. And Matthew Raymer, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
All right. Hope you all enjoyed that interview today with my guest, Matthew Raymer. Really, really interesting guy. And you can also go and listen to the bonus part too, because I'm sure you're going to want to continue on. So definitely do that after I wrap this show here. If you aren't a member of the Lions of Liberty Pride, you can easily join by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com and getting that bonus feed so you can hear the rest of my conversation with Matthew. I was really, I don't want to say surprised by how much I enjoyed this conversation, but I haven't, honestly, I never heard Matthew on a podcast before. I was familiar with his product, Content Safe, really interested in learning more about it. And really, super interesting guy getting to talk with Matthew. I got to talk to him for, another hour. So I probably will have him back on in the future. And hopefully you guys enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And I'm pretty much going to end the show right about here because I'm recording this very, very late on Sunday night, and I need to finish editing this podcast, get it published. It's been a heck of a week and a weekend. Didn't have time to do it until right now. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode, and I will see you all next week. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.